That afternoon, the sun was gentle. I was folding a blanket when I heard the car pull up outside the gate. Andrew, my son, stepped out, walked up with a quick, polite smile. "Just stopping by for a minute, Mom," he said. "My wife's waiting in the car." We sat for barely 5 minutes. He talked about work, about the kids getting ready for summer break. I poured tea. He didn't drink it. Then, just as he stood to leave, he said a sentence I still remember word for word. "You won't be coming with us. We prefer to keep this trip. Only family." "Only family." I smiled. I nodded. "Okay," I said, with the same voice I used when he scraped his knee and told me it didn't hurt. But inside, something cold and heavy slid through my chest. Andrew didn't look at me when he said it, just tugged at his sleeve like he couldn't wait to move on. And I sat there, with a cold cup of tea in my hand and a question I never said out loud. If I'm not family, then what am I? Just the woman who raised him? Who paid the bills, wiped the tears, and disappeared when no longer needed? My name is Margaret Wallace. I'm 64 years old, and that was the moment I realised I'd been quietly written out of my own story. The distance between us didn't start just now, it started years earlier, with the little things. Emily stopped calling me Mom. At first, it was Margaret in formal moments. Then it was no name at all, just clipped nods. A quiet distance she wore like perfume, light enough to ignore but strong enough to feel. Andrew didn't push back. He never did. When she rolled her eyes at my casserole, he smiled like it was nothing. When I asked about their anniversary plans, he said, "It's kind of a couples thing, Mom," and changed the subject before I could respond. Birthdays turned into group texts. Holidays became rotations. "We were just there last year." They stopped asking me to babysit and started expecting it. And when I stayed late or brought over groceries, they didn't say thank you, they said, "You're a lifesaver." Which sounds like gratitude until you realise it's shorthand for, "You should have done this." There was a photo on Emily's fridge last summer. Their trip to the lake, the whole family, her parents, her sisters, Andrew, the kids. I wasn't in it, I wasn't invited. And when I mentioned it, Emily just said, "Oh, that was kind of spontaneous." It wasn't one moment. It was a pattern. Careful, curated, and always just gentle enough to be deniable. And I let it happen. Because I believed if I didn't make trouble, if I stayed useful, if I stayed kind, they'd keep a place for me. I believed that love meant enduring. But love without respect isn't love. They say you don't realise the weight you carry until you finally set it down. But for me, the weight wasn't heavy at once. It crept in slowly. Over the years, I was 25 when Andrew was born. His father and I had just moved into a small rental on the east side of town. One bathroom, peeling wallpaper, and a backyard with weeds taller than a toddler. But it was ours. And we were enough. Then life happened. My husband Charlie passed when Andrew was 7. A heart attack, they said. Quick, painless. But nothing that follows grief is ever quick or painless. I became everything overnight. Mother, father, provider. I took the night shift at the hospital, graveyard hours. I cleaned bedpans, held the hands of dying strangers, and pushed stretchers under buzzing fluorescent lights. By morning I'd stumble home, change into a clean blouse, and walk Andrew to school like nothing had changed. And that's how it went. Years of fractured sleep, missed birthdays, quiet dinners alone, all so my son could dream freely. When he got into college, I cried in the car before the ceremony, not out of sadness, but because I had managed it. Every late hour, every second job, every meal skipped to make room in the budget. It had led to this moment. I paid every loan, every semester. He never knew what it cost me. I never told him. Then came the wedding. Emily looked radiant, and Andrew was nervous. I handed them a check for $25,000. My entire emergency savings. She cried. He said, "You didn't have to." I said, "I wanted to." And that was true, then. When they had their first baby Lily, I refinanced the house so they could upgrade to something more spacious. The second mortgage was under my name. Just a signature, they said. Just a formality. But what they didn't see was this. Every time they stepped forward, I took a step back. Every success they had was built on a platform I built in silence. I didn't ask for anything in return. No recognition, no thank you speeches. I was proud. I told myself that was enough. But what I didn't realize was, when you spend your whole life in the background, people start to forget you were ever center stage, until one day, like last week, your own son says, "You won't be joining us." My wife prefers to keep it only family. They didn't erase me all at once. They did it gently, every time they accepted my help, but forgot my name. A shift in control. A quiet erasure. And once I noticed that shift, I couldn't stop asking myself, what else had they quietly taken from me? Emily had mentioned, casually, like it meant nothing, that the cabin insurance needed to be renewed under the family policy. I remember blinking when she said that. Family policy? That cabin wasn't part of any family trust. At least, not the last time I checked. I'd never signed anything that would make it theirs. Then, a few days later, Andrew accidentally forwarded me an email, something about filing a claim for storm damage to the cabin roof. In the email, he was listed as the policyholder. Me, not even carbon copied. That's when I knew something didn't feel right. So that afternoon, I opened the bottom drawer where I kept important documents, tax returns, birth certificates, old property records. That's where I found it. The deed to the Colorado cabin. 6 years ago, I bought that house, paid with what was left of my husband's life insurance and my personal savings. It was meant to be a quiet retreat for family holidays, snowy weekends, and birthdays. And legally, it was mine. Only my name appeared on the title. No co-owners, no joint signature. But last week, Andrew said, we booked a cabin for the family trip. They hadn't booked anything. They were planning to use my house. Without asking, without informing. I kept reading. The insurance file was next, recently updated. Primary contact, Andrew Wallace. My name was on the signature line, but not in my handwriting. Close, but not mine. It had been forged. Sloppy enough for me to notice. Clean enough to fool a clerk. Then I saw it. A home equity line of credit for $82,000. Borrower, Andrew Wallace. Guarantor, Margaret Wallace. That's me. Secured. With my property. My name. My home. My credit history was used without my knowledge or consent. I didn't call my son to ask. I made myself a list. First, call the insurance company. Then, get every document from the bank. Every single one. Next, book an appointment with my lawyer. After that, shut down access to the cabin completely. And finally, change the locks for good. I had spent decades helping Andrew build a life. Now I was taking mine back document by document, no shouting, no guilt trips, just signatures that were truly mine. The lawyer's office was quiet. Carpeted halls. A soft, ticking clock. The kind of place where big decisions are made in whispers, not in anger. I sat across from the lawyer watching as she scanned through the final page. She looked up, calm but firm. "Do you want to proceed with full removal from the will?" she asked. I nodded. Yes. Effective immediately. He's no longer a beneficiary. The lawyer made a note, then glanced back at me. And the cabin. I reached into my bag and unfolded the notarized notice I'd brought. Usage revoked. No access. I've already changed the locks and notified local security. If anyone enters without my permission, it's trespassing. She asked, "Would you like to redirect the assets somewhere else?" That's when I finally smiled. Really smiled. Yes, my granddaughter, Lily. The lawyer gave a small nod, encouraging me to continue. "I'd like to set up a scholarship fund," I said. "In my late husband's name, Charles Wallace, for young girls pursuing healthcare. Lily will be the first recipient when she's ready." She reached for a fresh folder. We'll draft it today. I exhaled, not out of rage, not out of sadness, just relief. Because I didn't need to scream to be heard, I didn't need to plead to be respected. All I needed was a lawyer, a signature, and the strength to choose myself. I had spent my life building safety nets for everyone else. Now, with the lawyer's quiet help, I was finally building one for myself. As the lawyer typed, I glanced down at a photo tucked inside my wallet. My little girl with wild curls and a gap-toothed grin. Lily. I couldn't help but smile. My mind drifted back to a Tuesday afternoon, 2 summers ago. Lily had come over while her parents were running errands. We ended up spending the whole day in the backyard, painting river rocks, chasing butterflies, giggling under the sun. At one point, she looked up from her little fingers covered in paint and asked, "Grandma, why do you always smile even when no one else does?" I chuckled and told her, "Because sometimes, sweetheart, a smile is the only umbrella you've got." That night, she curled up on the couch and fell asleep with her head in my lap, a smudge of blue still on her nose. It was the last time we had a whole day just for the two of us. But I never let that memory fade. And clearly, my little butterfly didn't either. Just a few weeks ago, Lily sent me a letter, written in her careful, slanted handwriting with little hearts over the eyes. "Grandma, I miss you. I don't know why Mommy and Daddy act weird around you now, but I still think about the butterfly rock we painted. I keep it by my bed. I want to be a nurse to take care of people like you were. Can you tell me more about Grandpa next time I see you?" I folded that letter like a treasure and tucked it in my nightstand. And now, finally, I'm going to answer her, not just with words, but with a legacy. He didn't call first this time. I heard the screech of tires before I saw the car. Andrew stormed up the steps like a man late for a meeting, not like a son about to face the mother he had just erased. Emily trailed behind, lips pressed into a tight, judgmental line. I hadn't seen her since she told me with that polished little smirk that their family trip didn't include me. I didn't invite them in. They came anyway. "What the hell is going on, Mom?" Andrew's voice cracked with anger. "You shut down the cabin? Changed the locks? Froze our insurance access? Are you out of your mind?" I set my teacup down calmly. "No," I said. "I'm finally thinking clearly." Emily scoffed behind him. "You could have at least warned us. We had guests invited. It's humiliating." "You mean like being told I'm not family anymore?" I said, stepping forward. "Like sitting alone while you planned a vacation with my house, with my name, and never once looking me in the eye?" Andrew waved his hands. "Oh, come on. You're seriously still upset about that?" "It was just phrasing. Emily didn't mean it that way." "Don't drag me into this," Emily snapped. "I didn't think it would spiral into you blowing up the entire family over one trip." I turned to her. "You mean the trip to the cabin I bought with my savings and your father-in-law's inheritance? The one you decorated like it was your name on the deed?" Emily flushed. "Andrew said it was in the family trust." "The trust you both helped write me out of?" I shot back. Andrew slammed his palm on the table. "You're making this so damn dramatic. We've used the cabin for years, Mom. You never cared before." "Because I trusted you," I shouted for the first time. "I let you use my home, my money, my name, because I thought that's what mothers do. I broke myself to build you a better life. And what did you build? A world I'm not welcome in." Emily stepped in front of Andrew, added, "You know what I think," she said. "You liked being a martyr. That's your thing, right? Quiet suffering, subtle guilt. But now it's revenge time." "Revenge?" I said, voice shaking. "No, Emily, revenge is petty. This—" I gestured to the folder on the table. "This is boundaries, something you both never learned." I've been quiet long enough. People forget what my voice sounds like, so I spoke in documents instead. Andrew grabbed the folder, flipped it open. His face paled as he scanned the documents. "This is insane," he barked. "You're removing me from the trust? Selling the house? Do you even hear yourself? I looked at him, calm and still. Yes, I said. And for the first time in 30 years, I actually do. Emily let out a short, bitter laugh, the kind that doesn't come from humour, just superiority. This is emotional blackmail, Margaret. You're blowing up our lives because of some stupid vacation? I turned to her, steady. No, Emily. This isn't about a vacation. It's about years of being erased, years of being helpful but invisible, of being useful but unwanted. Andrew slammed the folder on the table. That cabin was supposed to be mine. That house was part of my future. Dad would have wanted that. I took a breath. Your father wanted you to be kind. He wanted you to grow into a man who worked hard and loved harder, not someone who thinks love comes with a deed and a signature. Emily crossed her arms, smirking. You just want attention. I looked her right in the eye. Number, I want respect. But since neither of you seems to know the difference, I'll settle for space. Andrew stepped toward me, voice rising. You're bitter, Mom. Bitter and lonely. You're going to regret this when you're old and alone and there's no one left. I almost laughed. Andrew, I've been alone for years, since my love became your ATM, since you stopped seeing me as a person. I gave everything, and you gave me silence. I paused, letting that hang in the air. Then I pushed the folder of signed papers back across the table. This isn't revenge. This is clarity, and if that clarity costs me your approval, I consider it a bargain. Emily grabbed her purse with a loud zip. Andrew just stood there, stunned, before she pulled him by the arm toward the front door. Her heels clicked down the hallway like a gavel strikes in a courtroom she thought she'd won. I didn't say goodbye. I stood there, my hand resting gently on the signed papers. The weight of 30 years finally set down. The door slammed behind them, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt light. He thought I'd show up crying, thought I'd beg for a seat at a table I built. Instead, I froze the cabin, changed the locks, and brought the documents. Because when silence becomes habit, the loudest thing you can do is finally say no. 3 days later, I found a small ivory envelope tucked neatly into my mailbox. No email, no phone call, just a delicate card. Inside was a letter, written in neat cursive, the kind no school teaches anymore. Dear Grandma, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I'm sorry, truly. Mom and Dad keep saying you overreacted, but it doesn't feel right. I remember you always being kind, funny, and steady. I miss your stories. I miss the cinnamon cookies. And I want to know more. About you, about Grandpa Charlie, about where Dad grew up before everything turned cold. If you ever need company, I'd love to visit. Love, Lily. I sat with that letter for a long time. My hands trembled, not from anger, but from something softer, hope. That same evening, I wrote back. I told Lily I'd be heading north in 2 weeks, to a small cabin near the lake where Charlie used to fish, before everything changed. I asked if she wanted to come. She said yes, almost instantly. There was no grand scene when we met again, no tearful airport embraces, no dramatic music, just the two of us, one old and one young, packing our bags. We weren't running away from anything. We were walking towards something, reconnection. She was looking for her roots, and I was ready finally to be seen as more than the quiet figure in the background, to be the storyteller, the witness, the bridge. When our car rolled to a stop in front of the small wooden cabin by the lake, I felt my chest tighten. The air was crisp and smelled of pine and water. The lake caught the late afternoon light like a sheet of glass. And there it was, the old wooden dock, still holding its place after all these years. This is where Grandpa used to fish? Lily asked, her eyes locked on the water. Yes, I said, smiling at the memory. He could sit there all morning just listening to the water. Did you ever fish with him? Oh, yes, I chuckled, but I wasn't nearly as patient. I preferred to sit beside him and listen to his stories. She looked at me, her voice gentle. Will you tell me one of his stories now? I met her gaze, and for a moment I saw Charlie in her, that same warm curiosity. "All right," I said, "but we have to sit on the dock. That's where he always told them." We walked down the small slope, the boards creaking under our weight as we settled at the edge. A breeze rippled the water, carrying the scent of the lake. I began to speak, my voice blending with the lapping waves and the call of distant birds. And in that moment I could almost feel him there, listening with us, smiling. I left before the sun even touched the rooftops. No grand goodbyes, no final confrontation. Just the quiet shuffle of my suitcase wheels across the gravel driveway and the steady turn of the key in the ignition. In the passenger seat, I placed 3 things. Lily's letter, folded carefully, soft at the edges where I'd read it a dozen times. A photograph, Charlie in a flannel shirt holding a pudgy, laughing Andrew, and a map. Old, wrinkled, with a red circle around a small lake town we once dreamed of retiring to, back when dreams still felt like shared property. The rearview mirror showed me a house I'd poured my life into, mortgage papers, repainted walls, holidays that no one remembered but me, but I didn't look back, not out of anger, just clarity. Because this time, I wasn't leaving in silence. This time, I wasn't leaving for anyone. I was leaving for something. The road opened in front of me like it had been waiting. Morning mist curling off the asphalt, trees lining the highway like quiet witnesses. My hands rested easily on the wheel. No shaking, no second thoughts. For the first time in decades, I wasn't rushing towards someone else's needs. I wasn't making room. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into a story where I no longer belonged. I was writing something new, a chapter with fewer compromises and more truth. A chapter where the word mother didn't mean invisible. A chapter where silence was no longer my default language. They say silence is strength, but they forget. There's a silence that suffocates, and a silence that sets you free. So no, I'm not the woman they forgot to invite. I'm not the guest at the table I paid for. I'm the one behind the wheel now, driving with no apology, no permission, just a purpose, because I wasn't left behind. I just chose to walk ahead. So, that's how the story ends. If this made you think, or if you've lived through something similar, share your thoughts in the comments. Our channel is a space for real stories, from people who've weathered life's storms. Subscribe to the channel for more, because sometimes the deepest form of revenge is simply living on your own terms.